Welcome to the public meeting for the draft remedial action plan for soil at the Port of Stockton Site 47. I am Tammy Pickens, the Public Participation Specialist for the Department of Toxic Substance Control. The presentation materials is provided in the DTSC EnviroStore database, www.enviroStore.dtsc.ca.gov. The complete link is provided in the chat. Next slide. By participating in this meeting, you understand that this meeting is being recorded. You may be muted for background noise. During the question and comments, we will focus on topics related to today's presentation. We will do our best to listen and address all comments and questions so that everyone can participate. Thank you for your patience and understanding. Next slide. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide information regarding the cleanup project, receive comments on the remedial action plan, and answer questions. The presentation slides are available in English and Spanish at the link provided in the chat. For members of the media, please contact Russ Edmondson in the DTSC Office of Communications at russ.edmondson@dtsc.ca.gov. His information is provided in the chat. Next slide. The meeting agenda includes welcome and introduction, the technical presentation, questions and comments, closing, and next steps. Next slide. Our meeting panel today includes representatives from DTSC, the Water Board, and the Port of Stockton. They will be available at the end of the meeting to answer questions. I will now ask everyone to turn on their camera and introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Dwayne White. I'm the unit supervisor here for the California Department of Toxic Substances Control.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Shahid Mahmood. I'm the project manager, DTSC project manager for this project. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Clardy. I'm a senior engineering geologist with the Central Valley Water Board, and I'm sitting in for Carla Landrum today.
Tonight, Shahid Mahmood and Dwayne White will be speaking tonight. Next slide. The mission of DTSC is to protect California's people, community, and environment from toxic substances, to enhance economical vitality by restoring contaminated land, and to compel manufacturers to make safer consumer products. Next slide. The Water Board's mission is to preserve, enhance, and restore the quality of California's water resources and drinking water for the protection of the environment, public health, and all beneficial uses, and to ensure proper water resource allocations and efficient use for the benefit of present and future generations. Next slide. I will now introduce Dwayne White. Dwayne.
Hello, Dwayne White again, DTSC from the Site Mitigation and Restoration Program. Next slide. I want to briefly go over the cleanup process. It begins when a site comes in through discovery, usually through a phase 1. where someone will go through an assessment of the property. Next is a preliminary endangerment assessment. This is usually where you go out and collect some samples, some analytical results, either the soil, groundwater, vapor. And you also do, as part of the assessment, like the elementary risk assessment. Next, we'll do for community public participation is the baseline community survey. This, we have a standard questionnaire that goes out with a cover letter. This goes to people usually within a quarter-mile radius from the site, and it gauges their interest in the site. It asks them such questions as if there's a public meeting, will they attend it? Have they heard about the site? What's their knowledge about it? What are their concerns? Next, we might do a community assessment or public participation plan. That usually involves going out and doing interviews in the community with stakeholders, residents, business people, city council folks, and environmental groups. We can also do what's called fact sheets or survey or community updates. And that's usually 2 or 3 pages that go out to inform people about the public, about some information. We also can conduct public meetings, which is why we're here today. For this time, we've done a remedial investigation and feasibility study and risk assessment. The project manager, Shahid, will go over this more in detail. We're also here tonight to receive your comments and answer your questions on the draft remedial action plan. This kind of is a summary document of the remedial investigation, what was found, what we found during the characterization, and what remedial alternatives were considered and which one's being proposed. We also have to do a document to comply with CEQA, which we'll talk about later. We also sent out public notice that appeared in the newspaper. We sent out, again, fact sheets or community updates and the public meeting, which is why we're here today. We also have a 30-day comment period started in early August, and it'll be completed in early September. Once we receive, after the comment period is concluded, dtsc and the Water Board will review the comments and do a response to comments. Based upon the comments, there might be some changes into the remedial action plan before it becomes finalized. After that, the consultant will prepare a remedial design plan, which is the design documents to implement the remedy. Next will be the implementation, which is the construction of the remedy. And lastly, certification. And then operation and maintenance, if needed, to maintain and operate the remedy. Next slide. I'd like to introduce the project manager, Shahid Mahmood.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Shahid Mahmood again. I'm the dtsc project manager for the Rough and Ready Island. And I will be presenting the technical information regarding this project, which brings us to next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, here is an outline of the topics I will be talking tonight. Keep documents, purpose of tonight's meeting, where is Rough and Ready Island located, site history, why dtsc and Water Board are involved to this project, site characterization, and a recommended cleanup for this site. Next slide, please. There are 2 primary documents available, the remedial investigation focused feasibility study, which is known as RI and FFS, and the draft remedial action plan for soil, which I may refer to a RAP. The RI and FS combine the information from investigations conducted between 1995 and 2020, evaluated the risks to people and wildlife, and evaluated possible cleanup approaches. The RIFS link leads to 3 documents. 2 are for the RIFS itself, and 1 is dtsc approval letter. The link for the RIFS is being copied into chat. The RAP presents proposed cleanup approach for your review and comment. The link for the RAP leads directly to the document and is also being copied into the chat. The purpose of this RAP is to select a remedy and propose of this evening and the purpose of this meeting. Next slide, please. Meeting purpose. The purpose of this meeting is to provide with the information regarding Site 47 cleanup project, receive your comments on the draft remedial action plan for soil, and answer your questions. So the RI and FS RAP are available at 3 repositories that will be provided toward the end of the presentation. Those repository locations are at the Cesar Chavez Library in Stockton, Port of Stockton at 2201 West Washington Street, Stockton, and the dtsc Sacramento office at 8800 Call Center Drive in Sacramento. Please note that you can also provide comments after the meeting through Tuesday, September 12th. After the review period ends on September 12th, DTSC and the Water Board will prepare a response to all comments and revise the RAP as needed. And the next is answer questions. So let's talk about Rough and Ready Island, where it's located. Next slide, please. Okay, Rough and Ready Island is on the western edge of the city of Stockton, with the San Joaquin River to the north and Burns Cutoff to the south. Stockton is about 60 miles east of San Francisco. Rough and Ready Island is about 1,459 acres. A short history of the Rough and Island is presented in the next slide. Next slide, please. The map on the left is Rough and Ready Island in 1913, and the map on the right is from the Navy era. The island was marshland when settlers arrived, and levees were installed so that it can grow crops. In the early 1930s, the San Joaquin River was straightened and deepened to allow ships to reach Stockton, and the island began its use as a port. The military used Rough and Ready Island between 1944 to 1996. The Port of Stockton used Rough and Ready Island as a port since receiving the property from the Navy. Our military use left contamination on island, which we will discuss in the next slide. Next slide, please. So from 1944 to about 1979, the Department of Defense released hazardous substances to Rough and Ready Island. Investigations began in 1984 and found contamination in soil and groundwater. This map provides the approximate location of contaminated areas. The group indicates a priority based on level of contamination and accessibility. Group A is the highest priority. Site 47 is at the south end, or located on the figure. Because of the contamination, it was necessary to restrict uses in some areas when the property transferred to port, as discussed in the next slide. Next slide, please. Most of entire island was transferred from Navy to port between 1966 to 2011. The map shows the island that was transferred. Burns Cutoff is showing to the left or the west, or the San Joaquin River is shown to the right or west. The site is accessible on Navy Drive, which across San Joaquin River. Navy Drive is shown at the bottom or south. DTSC, the Water Board, and the port signed consent agreement back in 2003, whereby the port would complete the cleanup of contaminated parcel with DTSC and Water Board oversight. In the meantime, contaminated parcels were transferred with restrictions on their use to protect public health. And land use covenant was recorded on these parcels to restrict uses. For example, the port cannot build homes or on the restricted areas which soils and move soils without DTSC and water board approval or use the groundwater. Provided an area is cleaned up, the port can use the property. We will now discuss redevelopment proposal on the next slide. Next slide, please. The figure shows Site 47 project Terra and Site 47 overview. The Site 47 is bounded by McLoy Avenue on North Hooper Street on the east and drainage channel to the south. The western boundary of the site is partially curving and is positioned between curved section of the port of Stockton expressways and Decatur. The southern side of the Site 47 is drainage channel, which connects to the island wide drainage network and pump station. Site 47 contains a former model airplane landing strip and skeet and trap shooting range, abandoned buildings and sport courts, and a section of railroad tracks. The Port of Stockton has a client who wants to develop a warehouse and a distribution facility project in area Site 47. While remediation is required, regardless of property use, the remedy is being adjusted to accommodate the warehouse and distribution facility project. Next project, please. Next slide. This is the figure for total arsenic on Site 47. North is facing up. White means it's not contaminated. Discuss in the next slide. That is the concentration are below levels in this figure. Blue rectangle means it's contaminated. The darker the blue, the more contaminated. The other figures are similar to this one. Now let's talk about cleanup alternative considered for this project on the next slide. Next slide, please. This table presents average chemical of concern concentrations and cleanup goals in a milligram per kilogram. The first column represents chemical of concerns. And the second column represents remedial action goals in milligram per kilogram. And the third column represents concentrations average in milligram per kilogram. Each of the contaminants on this table are present on the site, and concentration that can present a risk to public and wildlife. The lowest number in the table represent the most stringent standard for the contamination. The port completed the Site 47 RA and FFS in March of 2022. The Site 47 RA and FFS summarize the sampling data and other information collected between 1995 and 2020. The contaminant of concern for the major contaminant of concern for the site is metal, arsenic, and the main driver for the site cleanup. Other chemical of concerns included polyaromatic hydrocarbons called PHS and organopesticides, dichlorodiphenol, dichloroethane, also known as DDT, and a human health and ecological risk assessment were performed regarding the site. A risk assessment determined that arsenic is the primary risk-driving chemical of concern throughout the Site 47 and adjacent areas. The arsenic concentration pose risk to industrial commercial workers who may work on the site in the future or wildlife. The 5 alternatives to mitigate the risk are discussed in the next slide. Next slide, please. The RAP considered 5 alternatives and evaluated to mitigate the risk. Alternative number one include no further action, and it's just no action. The existing land use covenant would remain in place, and there would be no remediation. The no action alternative is always evaluated comparison to current conditions. The no action alternative was deemed no protective. Alternative number 2 includes fencing and signs that would install surrounding Site 47. The fence will restrict access to Site 47 for the general public, and some ecological receptors like large mammals, thereby reducing the potential for direct contact with the contaminated soils. Warning signs would also be mounted directly on the fencing to deter the general public from the Site 47. In addition, the existing covers would be retained near the eastern boundary and within the paved warehouse area west of the Site 47. The existing covers and fencing would be inspected and maintained regularly, and future land use and activities with the area requiring institutional controls. Alternative number 3 includes new soil and asphalt cover would be installed over the majority of the Site 47, and existing cover, such as building foundations and paved areas, would be repaired as needed to serve a physical barrier. The new soil cover would consist of a demarcation layer and a minimum of 2 feet of clean soil at the ground surface. Following excavation areas would be backfilled with clean imported soil. Alternative number 4 includes excavation the top 2 feet of soil and disposing the soil to the permitted landfill. The excavation would be backfilled with clean soil. The existing cover would be repaired to serve as a physical barrier, and a new asphalt cover would be installed. Alternative number 5 is similar to alternative number 3, except it is integrated with the SPOD and the site's development. Soil will be excavated and consolidated underneath the cover. New covers and repair of existing covers in areas within the remedial boundary but outside the site's development. Unpaved areas would be covered with the demarcation layer and the 2 feet of clean soil. Existing covers in the other area would be repaired as needed to serve as a physical barrier. Alternative number 5 is the most effective and viable alternative because it will support a proposed development called Project Sarah with near-term economic benefits to the region. Alternative 5 involves installation of a durable cover that is integrated with the Project Sarah development, maintaining the cover over time, and establishing institutional control to restrict future land use. Next slide, please. So next slide is about evaluation criteria. The 5 remedial alternatives were evaluated and then compared with the 9 federal criteria from Environmental Protection Agency guidance to ensure compliance with the 9 federal criteria. Overall protection of human health and the environment addresses whether or not a remedy provides adequate protection and describes how risks posed through each pathway and are eliminated, reduced, or controlled through treatment, engineering controls, and institutional controls. Next, compliance with applicable and relevant and appropriate requirement we call ARRs addresses whether or not a remedy will meet all federal, state, and local environmental laws and regulations that qualifies as an ARRs. Next, long-term effectiveness refers to ability of remedy to maintain a reliable protection of human health and the environment over time once cleanup goals have been met. Next, reduction of toxicity, mobility, or volume through treatment refers to the ability of remedy to reduce the toxicity, mobility, or volume of hazardous substances or other chemicals present at site. Next, short-term effectiveness addresses potential adverse impacts on the human health and the environment that may pose during the construction and implementation period and the period of time until the cleanup standards are achieved. Next criteria is implementability, refers to technical and administrative feasibility of a remedy, including the available of availability of materials and services needed to carry out a particular alternative year. Cost evaluates the estimated capital and operation and maintenance costs for each alternate over a period of 30 years. The next is regulatory agency acceptance. This criteria indicates whether, based on its review of the information, the applicable regulatory agency would agree with the preferred alternative. Community acceptance indicates whether community concerns are addressed by the remedy and whether or not the community has a preference for the remedy. Next slide, please. Okay. The RAP recommends alternate number 5. It's called expanded excavation with on-site consolidation, existing durable cover, expanded new durable cover, and institution controls. Alternative number 5 is the most effective and viable alternative because it will support a proposed development with near-term economic benefit to the region. Alternative number 5 involves installing durable cover that is integrated with the project's further development, maintaining cover over time, and establishing institution control to restrict the future land use. This will be completed in 2 phases. During phase 1, about 57,000 cubic yards of the contaminated soil will be excavated and consolidated under a proposed future warehouse. The warehouse will be 2 feet above the surface to accommodate consolidated soil. The remaining areas will be covered with either asphalt or concrete. Unpaved areas will be covered with a demarcation layer and 2 feet of clean soil. The existing and new covers will be inspected and maintained, and future land use and activity will be restricted through a land use covenant. The type of durable cover includes the warehouse and outdoor storage area, which includes a concrete foundation to limit exposure to the human health, a parking and a driveway area, which will include concrete and asphalt concrete pavement. A new railroad spur will include concrete slab and exterior concrete areas and sidewalk and concrete. The remediation will start in 2024 and will be completed in 2 years. In phase 2, soils outside the plant warehouse and outside storage area will include a sampling plan to verify extent of arsenic in shallow soil. Phase 2 will start in 2026 and will be completed in 6 months. The durable cover and soil cover would prevent contact with the waste and contaminated soils. Monitoring wells will be installed and samples will be collected. Dorian will provide information regarding the next slide. Go ahead, Dwayne.
Thank you. So, California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA compliance. So he discussed about the redevelopment of the site, but the warehouse and distribution facility. Just want to let you know that the Port of Stockton, they completed an environmental impact report to comply with CEQA. They held a comment period and a public meeting in January through February of 2022. They received comments. They're addressing those comments, preparing a response, and preparing a revised environmental impact report. The EIR combined both projects, both the remediation project, which is the project that Shahid just discussed, and the development of the warehouse and distribution facility. More information is available at that website down below, www.portofstockton.com/CEQA.documents. Next slide, please.
We are now at the question We are now at the question and comment portion of this presentation. This slide provides an overview of the 3 ways you can ask questions or make a comment. The first is to use the Zoom audio. Use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. When you're called on, you will be invited to unmute your audio. Number 2, for anyone calling in by phone, press *9 to raise your hand. The facilitator will say the last 3 digits of your phone number when it's your turn. You will then press *6 to unmute your audio. The third way is to have your questions read by the facilitator. Please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We will now open up to questions. Since we have not received any questions or comments, we will go to the next slide. Since we're not, at this point in time, we will not be taking a 5-minute break. So we'll go back to the next slide. We are now at the formal public comment portion of the meeting. We will receive your comments without responding. Hearing comments will be answered in a response to comment document accompanying the final draft RAP. In the formal comment portion of this meeting, I will now introduce Dwayne White to open the hearing. Dwayne.
Thank you, Tammy. Look forward to hearing your formal comments. I have 6:33 p.m.
This slide provides an overview of, next slide, please. This slide provides an overview of the 3 ways you can ask a question or make a comment. To use the Zoom audio, use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. We will call on you and you'll be invited to unmute your audio. For anyone calling by phone, press *9 to raise your hand. I will say the last 3 digits of your phone number when it's your turn. Then you will press *6 to unmute your audio. To have your question read by myself, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We will now begin to take comments. Wayne, I don't see any comments.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close the formal comment period. I have 6:34 p.m.
Next slide, please. The public comment period began August 10, 2023, and will continue until September 12, 2023. You may submit your comments by mail to Shahid Mahmood, the project manager, at 8800 Cal Center Drive, Sacramento, California, 95826, or by email shahid.mahmood@dtsc.ca.gov, or by phone at 916-255-3592. All comments must be received by September 12, 2023. This information is provided in the chat. Next slide. You may review documents at the following information repositories: Cesar Chavez Central Library, located at 605 North El Dorado Street in Stockton, California, 95202. call 209-937-8221 for hours. The Port of Stockton is located at 2201 West Washington Street in Stockton, California, 95203, 209-946-0246. You can call for hours. Or at DTSC Sacramento office located at 8800 Cal Center Drive, Sacramento, California, 95826. Call 916-255-3758 for appointment. Or you can go on www.envirostore.dtsc.ca.gov. This information and the complete link is provided in the chat. Next slide. On the behalf of DTSC, thank you for joining us. As we close, we ask that you please stay safe and please be well. Good night and have a good evening.